Okay, it's recording.
So, hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So, what's your name?
My name is Madison Prosser.
Um, what's your year in
I
Ball
am
State?
a freshman at Ball State.
And then what's your major?
I am majoring in nursing.
And then where are you from?
I'm from Avon, Indiana, which is about 20 minutes west of Indianapolis.
So, since you live near the city of Indy, do you think that living near the city has contributed to your ideas of anti-racism and racism?
So, from Avon, the community is very diverse, but if you go about 5 or 10 minutes east, there is not very much diversity and it is mostly people of color. And I definitely think with Avon being diverse as it is in all the schools, I think that has helped add to my understanding of racism as well as me being an anti-racist. But like I said, as you go 5 or 10 minutes east, because it's mostly people of color living there, because it's in Indianapolis and Marion County, you notice that there are more people of color, and the white people that live there, they tend to be more racist because there are only a few of them, so they would like to feel like they have more power because there are not as many as them as there are people of color.
Have you seen any incidents of white people having that acting as if they acting as if they have more power? Have you seen any of those certain instances in schools or in your area?
Definitely in my school, so white people correctly, that it was my senior year, and there was a white male teacher who is from Indianapolis area, and I had him for history in my junior year, and then when I was senior, he still taught history. It was U.S. history, and every day he did like daily events, like what happened during that day, like specifically, or what was like very like an interesting thing that happened. And one day it was in February, which is Black History Month, and he included something, I believe it dealt with the O.J. Simpson trial, and he had that as the daily event. And the so many students of color and even white students and the admins and other teachers gave a lot of backlash for that, because they believe that because he did that during Black History Month was like a racist thing that he did. So there ended up being a whole investigation into it. They had to talk to the students, talk to the teacher, and he ended up being suspended for, I believe, a month. So that is one of the big things I saw. And then when I was younger, I believe 5th or 6th grade, I was in a class. There were maybe a handful of students of color, and they would obviously raise their hand and participate in class. And there was one day we had a substitute teacher, and the substitute teacher would not call on any of the students of color. So when I was younger, I didn't really think much about that. But now, after taking this class and learning about microaggressions, racism, I can definitely see how that plays a role into what that substitute teacher did. So it really, like, now that I understand it, it makes me angry, because like even as a young student in school, being in 5th or 6th grade, you shouldn't be subjected to that at or such a young age.
Do you think either of those incidents shaped you or your school in a way? Like, did they have a reaction, or because a teacher getting kind of pushed out of the school system because of bringing up OJ would probably induce a reaction. So was there a reaction? Did it change your perspective of the school?
So when the incident happened in 5th grade I was talking about, I don't really think that shaped the incident or shaped the school or anything. Nothing really happened because we were so young, we didn't really know what was going on. But the one that happened in high school with the teacher, I definitely think that shaped the school because it allowed the administrators, principals, anyone to reiterate that we will not tolerate racism, we will not tolerate this being done. And personally, I think it affected me too in a way, or influenced me to not be that way. And if I see something like that being done, I need to call it out and make sure it doesn't happen again, or that if it does happen again, there will be worse repercussions of it, I guess I would say. So I think it did influence me because it makes me reevaluate what I want to say and make sure I don't say stuff like that, especially like if it were to be Black History Month, not to make something like make a statement or talk about something that happened in the Black community, because that could obviously have negative consequences and you would not want to offend people by that.
I think it's so interesting how something can happen when you're little and like elementary, and the way you react and interpret the situation varies so differently from in high school or in college because you just have more knowledge. You're kind of more alive and recognizing the situation.
I
Um,
definitely feel like with coming from a diverse school and understanding it as I grew older, and especially being a senior, being 18 and knowing what was going on, I feel like that played more or played more of a part in me understanding it and knowing that it is completely not right.
so since that whole situation kind of went into high school, how do you think your views kind of from high school changed once you enter this class and enter college? Do you think it kind of just expanded those same views, or did your views kind of change, or were stuff added to it, such as learning about microaggressions?
I definitely feel like they both expanded and added. So with the expanding of it, like I learned more about it, learned more like what type of microaggression it was, and learning that there wasn't just a microaggression, there were 3 different types of it. And it that expanded my learning and added to it. But I also think that there was so much under the skin that a lot of us didn't realize. And now taking this class, it allows me to see, like, dig deeper into like everything else that was happening, what all could have played a part into it and played a role, and what could have happened.
So, did you think about race growing up when you were little? Did you acknowledge it? Did you realize the um how it's affecting society and how it's affecting other people in your grade when you were little?
So when I was little, I didn't really, like, as being young, you don't really understand until you get older. But I knew kids, like, we were different, we had different skin tones, and we came from different backgrounds. But that didn't change like how I treat them. Like, I was always taught, like, growing up, treat people how you want to be treated. And even if they're a different skin color than you, like, that does, like, we all bleed red. There's no difference in on what's on our inside, it's just the appearance on our outside. So that, I don't really think it affected me. I think I just kind of knew what was right and wrong, and what was right and wrong to say or not say in that moment, because I, even young, like, you don't want to say something and have it be offensive or like cause them problems. Like we were talking about in class one day, like the microaggressions or racism that causes mental health problems. So if, like, say I was supposed to, or say I would have said something racist, like that could have stayed in their head until, like, they've grown up, and that could have caused mental health problems or just any problems physically.
I like how you included that we all bleed red because it's something that holds true from like elementary all the way up to now. It's something that you can't really argue, and it's something that's factual, so I guess everyone can see it. When did you first start thinking about race? Was it kind of when you started entering this class, when you thought of it as more as kind of not exactly, but like a figment of society, something that society kind of uses? Or did you start thinking about it earlier on in middle school, or start thinking about it differently than just um, how people look?
I'd probably have to say I started thinking about it more as I got into high school, so ninth grade, just because I was around. I mean, the high school is huge. It's over 3,000 kids. I mean, there's so much diversity in the high school. It's like I knew, like, in elementary and middle school and intermediate, like I knew about it, but I feel like I really started to get a grasp on it in high school because I would see racist remarks being said to from a white kid to a black kid, or microaggressions, and like still I didn't really know about it, but I mean it started to like register like that's not right. So I feel like Bartlett's class has definitely added to my understanding and definitely has given me more what's the word I want to use, given me more acknowledgement, I guess, of what goes on, and it's broadened my perspective because when you think about racism at a young age, you don't really think of like all the parts that go into it. But in Bartlett's class, you nitpick all those little parts that go into it, all the different things that, like all the different aspects of it. So you don't really know what all is in it until you learn about it more and just all the different aspects.
So, Brownsburg, where I live, is very close to Avon. So I'm just wondering, did you guys growing up have mainly white teachers, or was it more diverse faculty? Because I know diversity definitely helps with children growing up and their knowledge and their acceptance, kind of, I would say. So was there a more diverse faculty, or was it kind of filled more with white, like Brownsburg?
So I did not have a um, teacher of a minority group or a marginalized group until seventh grade in my math class. And that, I believe that is the only teacher I had all throughout kindergarten to 12th grade that was minority or like part of a marginalized group. I mean, I didn't have any black administrators, no administrators of color, minority group. When I was in high school, there were a lot more teachers of color than I had experienced before, but I did not have one. And we only had one administrator that was a black male, which I mean, I find that like, even if it was just one, for like black people are normally like, they are normally seen as inferior and not don't have power, or they aren't good enough to do whatever they're doing. So to see that we had a black administrator and it was a male, like that made me really happy because normally you normally just see them as teachers, not in higher levels of power.
Do you think that affected you in any way, that growing up you didn't really have all your teachers kind of looked alike? Do you think it affected your school system or you personally?
I don't I think it may have affected my school system because it made them realize that they weren't including very much, or they weren't being very diverse in their teachers or like teachers makeup or anything. But with me, I didn't really like, because I was young, I didn't really know about it. Like I was like, okay, I have a teacher. Like I didn't really think about who my teacher was. I'm just like, if they are allowing me to learn to the best of my ability, then, and like treating me with respect and everything, then that is enough for me.
Now let's transition to Ball State. So do you think the faculty holds the same, or do you think, like with diversity, or do you think the mindsets, because professor mindsets is very different from hometown teacher mindsets, so do you think any of that has contributed to your learning of anti-racism or diversity on campus?
So personally, I don't have all of my professors this semester are white, but being able to have Professor Bartlett and talking about all the different aspects of racism, how to be anti-racist, talking about the Multicultural Center and all those different, not activities, but people like the help center that we talked about where you could call and report something. Like normally you don't think about, I don't know, give me a second. um, it's kind of hard to see the diversity in teachers because there are so many professors and so many lecturers that you don't know, you hardly will know any of them, but the ones that you do know, like they will make a big impact on you. So, but definitely Bartlett, his knowledge of racism, anti-racism, intersectionality, microaggressions, like that has really helped me to understand. And I think it, like talking about the diversity of Ball State in the class, like even though Ball State is historically and predominantly a white school still to this day, there's a lot of diversity that you don't see. And that's why I think they're trying to have more inclusivity. I think that's how you might say it. So
Yeah, I think Bartlett is a really good addition to Ball State University. I think I am, and you are, and other members of our class. I'm very grateful that we get to have a teacher who has a mindset that you want to engage in and want to talk about it. So how have the events of 2020, going into during your college experience of the pandemic, the election, even some events that have happened on campus, how has that shaped your views of anti-racism and even racism in the United States?
so the pandemic, one of the things, so when the coronavirus first started, it was said to originate in China. And Donald Trump automatically was like, oh, it's a Chinese virus, like blaming it specifically on China and the Asian population. So I think that has added to my understanding of racism and anti-racism because it's like you can't blame a pandemic on just one marginalized group. And I definitely think the election and what has occurred, like the Black Lives Matter movement and everything, I don't think Donald Trump has handled that well at all. He is not supporting the marginalized community, the Black community, in what they're doing, and he kind of just pushes it under the rug and doesn't want to deal with it, I think. So, but also the election, it's a very interesting one. So, but with the events on campus, like with the Trump supporters and driving around campus and threatening students and making students feel uncomfortable and unsafe, like especially the students of color or minority groups, like because they are white supremacists, they're very racist, like, and they don't think that the marginalized or minority groups should be in the United States. Like they think it should just be the white population. So definitely it affects my views of racism because just Muncie's a small town anyways, but like knowing that something like that big has gone on, especially on our campus, it's insane to say the least.
How did you react when you found out about the groups coming onto campus and terrorizing the students? How did you react to that?
I was
Your first
I didn't
thought.
really I didn't find out for I think until the second time they came. There was one time I was sitting with my friends at um the atrium outside for dinner because it was nice out, and all these Trump trucks just came going through, speeding through, rolling their coal, had their Trump flags and everything out. And I'm just like, they're so ignorant. And then when I found out through social media, like mostly Snapchat, that they were back on campus, like causing accidents, threatening students and everything, that made me really mad because I'm like, the university should be a safe place for students, and that did not make them safe at all. It made them feel anything but safe.
How would you describe race relations and race issues at Ball State? So we have heard some about in this class, and I've heard of that one specifically. So how would you describe how Ball State handles it, how the students might even handle it? How do you think these events shape Ball State and what it carries on to do?
I feel like Ball State, it kind of depends because Ball State, they, when it first happened, they kind of just pushed it under the rug and we didn't hear an email or anything about it for a few days. So I feel like that may have hurt the racial relations with students of color on campus between them and then the like administrators, because like I feel like with them kind of pushing under the rug, not saying anything about it right away, may have made them feel like they didn't care about them at all or how it made them feel. But I also feel like with what they're doing this Thursday, with I think it's a talk back, where it's open mic and anyone can go and talk about how it made them feel or what they're feeling, how it affected them. I feel like that is a good way to allow students to tell how they feel about it and explain like maybe how them not like kind of holding back on making things aware may have like affected them and how they can do better next time.
So you mentioned the talk back, and this is definitely kind of it goes into my question, but what do you think the next steps are for Ball State? So you mentioned the talk back, so that was probably one of the next steps. So what do you think Ball State needs to do and move on now to work on these race issues and work on the incidents that have happened on campus?
I definitely feel like with the talk back, I feel like this should happen more often than just being after this racist thing that happened on campus. I feel like it should happen more often because even if student like it's an open place for students to talk, and sometimes they might not feel safe talking about it, but if they have them not regularly but more often, I feel like that will make students feel more protected in a way and valued because they have more space to talk about it. And I also think maybe making like honors 199 but not like making an anti-racism class available to everyone to take and not just honor students. I feel like if they made it available to any student that wanted to take it, I feel like that would also benefit as well for the students and the faculty.
So do you think, since we're in an honors college, do you think we kind of have a different perspective than maybe students outside of the honors college, or we get we get to have this class, and I do agree that they should have it outside, but do you think we kind of have a different perspective or kind of get a leg up on talk about this more than the other students?
Yes, I do, because I mean, we get to learn all the different aspects. We get to know what exactly is what if you see it, what it isn't if you see something, and like when you see something, speak up about it. Don't just let it go because like that is truly going to hurt someone's feelings. And I feel like being able to take this in the honors, like this has definitely added to my understanding and what I need to do and how I can continue my learning to be an anti-racist.
What would you describe as an anti-racist? What do you think is an anti-racist?
Someone that sees someone for who they are, not for their skin color. Well, sorry. See someone for who they are, not from the outside, but on the inside. like you are an ally to them, and you stand up for them if you see something that is offensive or racist or even homophobic, um, to any person of color in the LGBTQ plus community, intersectionality, microaggressions, anything that you see that can affect someone negatively, then like definitely say something, and you can be an ally to them for doing that and standing up for them.
Since you're taking this class, I'm guessing that you are, but how are you kind of working towards becoming an anti-racist yourself, or how have you seen yourself learning and incorporating to who you want to be as an anti-racist?
So I'm working towards it because with growing up in a large school corporations and a very large high school, I saw a lot of white students being racist in anything under the sun towards other students of color, and I'm like, I would always think to myself, I don't want to be that person. Like that, I could like even just hearing about it, it pisses me off. I'll say that. And I think that seeing those things and realizing the stuff that I witnessed back in like or intermediate school, and the stuff I've witnessed in high school, and then the stuff this past summer with the Black Lives Matter movement, like I think anyone can gain a perspective on that and take the information that is given and what they have witnessed and anything else, and they can take that to perspective for not what to do and how to be an anti-racist. So I definitely think that stuff has aided me in being an anti-racist and still learning about being one.
So you have talked about learning about how your childhood and your past experiences in your hometown have kind of led you to the anti-racist mindset, kind of all of that. Do you think any of that has led you to take this class?
I definitely think so.
So what caused you to take this class? What did you do when you heard about it?
So Professor Bartlett was actually my advisor, and he talked about this being, I believe it was the first year that it was available to honor student. Because last year, I think he met with a group of students. They were like, what would you like to see different? And this was one of the things they want to see different. And I automatically was like, he was telling me about it, and I'm like, this seems like a very interesting class. It can definitely add to my knowledge, because at that point, I was scared to have conversations about race or racism or anti-racism for that matter, because I didn't want to say the wrong thing and make someone angry or have bad blood between them and I, because I didn't want to say the wrong thing. And now taking this class, I know what I can say, what is appropriate to say, what not to say, and what can offend people without me even knowing it.
So we kind of share that similar mindset of kind of being scared before going into this class, because not knowing what to say. So what did you expect of this class? What did you think it was going to be? Who did you think was going to be in it?
I definitely expected, I did not expect to dive as deep into everything, all the units and material as we have. So I'm definitely glad we like that went above and beyond my expectations, being able to learn more about it and become more knowledgeable and gain a bigger perspective of it. And personally, when I took it, I thought there would be more students of color. But when one of the first days I got on, there were mostly white students, and that kind of shocked me, but it also made me happy at the same time, because they showed an interest in it as well and wanting to learn more about it and becoming anti-racist and knowing exactly what it is and everything that goes into it.
I share the same experience of going in and expecting more people of color, but I think our class was perfect. I think everyone was so great this year, and I'm so grateful that we got to have the class that we did.
It definitely helps, just like not just students of color, but like students that have openly said they're in the LGBTQ plus community and different student side minorities, like I feel like that also adds to it as well. I feel like that hearing their perspectives, like from whether it be microaggression, intersectionality, racism, anything like that, it adds to our understanding and makes us realize it's not just people of color, it's also the LGBTQ plus community as well as other minority groups.
In one of the first days, Bartlett said that no one has to be no one has to say their experiences. He's not gonna kind of like call people out and be like, oh, like you're the only like Black person that, like, he wasn't gonna do that. So what was your reaction to that? Did you expect that, or were you surprised that a teacher went out and said that? Because I know from past experiences, my teachers they would call people out and like ask them questions. So what was your reaction to that?
I definitely think that was very respectful of him because they shouldn't have to talk about those experiences that they have had or even witnessed, because that could bring back bad memories or negative thoughts about it and could affect their feelings towards it. And I think him telling them, you don't have to share, I think that provided a safe place, because he's like, you don't have to share it, but if you want to, like, we're here to listen about it and support you and listen and try our best to understand.
Other from taking this class, what anti-racist or race anti-racist actions or activities have you done this year, or have you done any?
So I have not done any yet, but I know when I do plan on going to the talk back on Thursday. I mean, just to hear people's stories, how it affected them, and definitely when the new multicultural center opens, I plan on going to that and planning on partaking in the activities that they provide, even if it's over Zoom, because like it'll be very nice to interact with other students and kind of branch out, I guess you would say.
So Ball State is taking these steps of the multicultural center and all of that, but how has you as a student navigated the whiteness that Ball State has?
It's been difficult because, it's a predominantly and historically white school, and there are very many white students compared to students of color or minority groups of students. So it's been more difficult to navigate the whiteness than it was in high school, because I had it was not as big as Ball State and there was more diversity, but I also feel like now, knowing what I know now, I feel like that will make it easier to navigate my whiteness and the whiteness on campus, and make it easier to make it known to other students.
How do you fear it make you easy to navigate your own whiteness?
What'd you say? Sorry, you cut out.
Sorry about that. Why do you fear that it will help you navigate your own whiteness at Ball State?
Why do I fear it will help me?
Why do you feel?
Sorry.
That's totally okay.
Because it really, trying to think of how I want to word it. It really, sorry.
That was a hard question.
No, it is. Some are more harder than the others. All right, how do I feel it will help me navigate my whiteness? I feel like it will help me by allowing myself to understand my whiteness more and not necessarily using it as a advantage or disadvantage to me navigating through, but it will help me understand more and how to navigate through that, and not make it like, oh, I'm white, I have white privilege, I'm white, anything like that. I don't think that like white privilege and whiteness is definitely a thing, but a lot of times, even though like white privilege is a thing, sometimes like some might think it like you have privilege when you don't with certain things. So
You just mentioned this and talked about white privilege, but how do you think white privilege has affected you, or how has you seen it open your eyes this year at Ball State University from this class?
I have definitely seen, because when we're talking about microaggressions, it's normally about, oh, like if this student is Hispanic, and in a Spanish class, they're automatically like picked if no other student wants to talk about it, and automatically picked to translate something. And I feel like as white privilege, sometimes, like this may seem bad, but sometimes teachers may prefer to call on a white student than a student of color. So I've definitely, not personally with mine, but I've seen other students' white privilege play an effect like on campus. So one example would be there were, who was it? Oh, it was in the parking garage on the third floor, and there was a black student who was had just parked his car, and then there was a white student who had just parked his car like 2 cars over from him, and the people were going around to scan the license plates, and the guys or the scanner scanned the white student's license plate. It was like, okay, you're good. And then when he went to scan the black students, he was like, you're not supposed to be here. Like, this isn't your level you're supposed to park on. So I definitely, like, I don't know. I feel like he kind of, like, even though, because he did belong there. Like, when he changed his, like, he redid the computer that they used to scan, it showed that that was his right parking garage. So I feel like just because it was a white student and he was like, okay, this is where you're supposed to be. But with the black student, he basically said, you're just on the wrong floor.
Um, so so what you said earlier about how it was bad to say about teachers preferring or calling on white students more. I think even though it's a bad thing to say, it needs to be said so it can be acknowledged. And do you think do you in your life, do you feel like in your hometown and both at Ball State, it's kind of like that story that you have seen people's attitude shift if they have that mindset?
Yes, I definitely do. Especially not so much, like I see it sometimes in like where I'm from, Avon, but as you get further into the city, you definitely see the mindsets change like more drastically than the outer parts of the city. I think we're urban. I think. I don't know if we're urban or suburbs.
Suburbs.
I always get those two confused, but you definitely see the change when you get into the city.
You said kind of earlier on that your family treated you, told you to, what was it? Like told you to be nice to everyone and treat people with kindness. So did your family do anything else that kind of shaped your views, or was there a certain situation where your view before coming to college was kind of shifted?
So when I was little, they told me to treat everyone how I want to be treated, treat people with kindness and be fair. And the problem is, a lot of my family is from southern Indiana and Kentucky, and a lot of them are very racist. And they think their opinion is the right opinion. No one else's opinion matters. They think they're superior. And it really makes me mad, because I'm like, I was brought up learning to teach people with kindness. And now seeing how they treat people and how they're racist, like even if they don't say racist remarks to a person of color's face, they still say it behind their back. And that really pisses me off, because I'm like, you know, we're the same people underneath. The only thing that's different is our skin color. I mean, like I said, we all bleed the same color. So those statements that they have made have definitely changed my perspective, because even though I was told to treat people how I want to be treated, they don't follow that. So I feel like me following that and not being racist, being anti-racist, I feel like that definitely added to it and why I wanted to specifically take this class as one of my classes.
I think a lot of people are actually going into our class kind of the same background experience of that, of having strong family views, and they just wanted to go to a class where they got to actually talk to with people like them, with people who wanted to learn just like them. And I think that's so cool that our class was like that.
It really is interesting because sometimes you don't think that some people may have won't have the same family history or family backgrounds, but as I've learned through hearing other students' perspectives, what they've witnessed, or what has happened, it's like a lot of people do have the same stories, and a lot of their families are divided on what they think is right and what's not right, and if they're racist or not racist. So I definitely feel like with hearing other students' stories, I think that's added to my perspectives as well and broadened my horizon.
Since most of our class is from Generation Z, how do you think that being a part of Generation Z has shaped it, has shaped their views, and how they speak in class about these topics?
So from what I know, I think, oh goodness, what was before millennials? Was
Are
it
baby boomers the same thing? No,
baby boomers?
baby boomers. Okay.
Baby boomers and then millennials.
Okay.
So I have found that baby boomers are more racist. They are the most racist ones that I have known. Like my grandparents on my mom's side, they're baby boomers. My dad's a baby boomer. And I feel like they grew up during the civil rights movement. Like my dad was born in 1958. So he was getting towards the end, because I believe Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964, if I'm not wrong. And so he was probably 6. So he was to that age where segregation was still going on some. And he knew, like, he had his own mindset, what was right, what was wrong, as well as my grandparents did. But also, they didn't think racism and segregation was wrong. So I feel like definitely they have different thoughts than we do. And I feel like with us growing up in the midst of, especially this year with the Black Lives Matter movement, all the innocent killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, that has definitely added to our understanding, because like even though there was that stuff back in the baby boomers time, like we are who is going to like lead the future. Like our generation is one of the biggest or largest future leaders that there's going to be, and if there's going to be change, it will have to be change, or our generation will have to change it and make a difference in what is going on in racism and just all of it.
Do you think our generation is going this about it the right way right now? Because a lot of it is based off social media right now, mostly because of our age. But do you think that this social media and our generation is going the right way with what they're trying to do about anti-racism and racism?
Yes and no. A lot of it is social media, like you said, and a lot of times on social media and the news even, you only hear one side, you don't hear both sides. So most of the time it's normally you hear the bad side of it and not the opposing side of what, like, normally it's like they make it seem worse than like what happened, or put the blame on the person of color, like, oh, they did this so they got shot and killed. But with like the news, like you also don't hear the true story as well. And the thing I don't agree with is when coming to protests and riots, looting and burning buildings, destroying things, breaking into buildings and breaking into houses and stuff. That is not the right way to do it. When I think of protest, I think of like the Martin Luther King protest, a peaceful protest, not harming anyone. So I think yes and no, that we're handling it the right way. So
I completely agree with it's kind of a popular opinion, kind of a split opinion about the way they're going about it with the some of them doing the looting and the ways that the rioting is happening. Um, do you think they can do something to shape the way that they go about it? How do you think? Let me change that question kind of. How do you think Ball State students, how we have in the past, how kind of like some protests on campus, how do you think? What do you think about those? What's your opinion about those? Would you ever want to join one?
the ones on campus.
Yeah.
So I believe the ones on campus, I think because they are on a college campus, I feel like they are more calm in a way, more calm and collected in a way, and not like the ones that happen in the big cities, like take for instance Chicago.
Yeah.
Um, but I definitely have thought about joining one. I believe a few months ago there was a women's march at Ball State, if I'm not wrong. And I wanted to do that, but I was home that weekend when it happened. So I was not able to do that, but I have thought about doing one before.
I think that's really cool. I really feel like as someone my age, I would want to go ahead and do the Ball State ones like you because it's surrounded by people that we're comfortable with, we know, and doing it in a way that we feel hits home, kind of.
Especially being like, if it's on Ball State campus, like that's your home away from home. Like that's where you learn and get your education and everything.
So this is kind of a different kind of direction, but how do you see yourself being anti-racist in your own major?
So my major is nursing. So with being a nurse, you have to be able to deal with all types of people, whether it be white, black, Asian, Hispanic. You have to be able to deal with anyone. And I feel like being anti-racist, that and still being like learning how to be anti-racist, I feel like that will definitely add to my knowledge and being anti-racist as well, because I will have to be able to help them without like, what's the word, without like, I'll have to be able to help them without judging them for who they are. And as a nurse, you have to be able to help anyone that comes through the doors. You have to be able to help. And there's been some instances like the other day I watched Pearl Harbor, and I don't know if you've ever heard of the movie. It's a World War II movie, and it was after the bombing at Pearl Harbor by the Japanese, and there was a white sailor who was like, his legs were blown off and he was taken to the hospital, and there was a Japanese doctor, and the white sailor was like, I don't want him touching me, he's a Jap. And he, even though he said that, he still helped him because he knew if he didn't get help he was going to die. So you have to be able to put up with those comments and not let the judgment get to you. Be like, they're still a person, and no matter what, you need to help them and save their life if it comes to that.
So what topics in this class kind of where go into that? Where do you think you have learned? So we have talked about how we can speak and what you can say. So how do you think going into nursing, how you can use those topics?
Is there a topic specifically?
Let's say like microaggressions. Like when you go into nursing, how can you how can you be knowledgeable about microaggressions and use that during your nursing career or even other topics in the class besides microaggressions?
So with microaggression, say there was a person of color that came in and they needed help, but there was also a white patient. So if you, just how instances in school, if you call on a white student instead of a black student, but same thing goes on, like as a nurse, like if you have the choice, you don't want to pick the white student because that could negatively impact the white patient instead of the black patient, because that could negatively affect them and be like, that's racist. Like, she didn't want to help me because I'm black. So things like that, and just knowing that you can't, like, you have to help anyone you can, whatever skin tone they are, whatever ethnicity, wherever their background is. Like, it shouldn't be, oh, you don't want to help this person because they're this race or this ethnicity. You want to help them because they're a person just like you are.
So besides nursing and doing all that, how are you gonna strive to be anti-racist in your future in whatever you do? And how are you gonna use topics from this class in the future? What will you remember from this class?
Definitely. Can you restate the first one again? Sorry, I was focusing on the last one.
I said, like, besides nursing, like, how will you kind of strive to be an anti-racist? What way, like, how will you take that into your future? And what topics will you remember from this class was my question.
Okay, sorry about that. Definitely for the first question, I will take, especially for in the future, if I have kids of my own, pass that my information I know along to them, make them knowledgeable of what being an anti-racist is, being an ally is, and knowing right from wrong, knowing racism is completely wrong, intersectionality, microaggression is completely wrong, and that you need to be an ally to the community rather than someone against that community. Because when you're against that community, that, I feel like that could negatively affect you as a person as well. And definitely for I will retain and take all this information with me, especially intersectionality, microaggression, and then in class we talked about color. So I definitely will be taking that information with me, and if I see something, obviously I'm going to speak up about it and not let it go unconfronted, I think, if that's a word, because if it's not confronted or talked about, then it's going to keep happening and it'll keep affecting more people.
I like how you said you want to teach your future family and people around you about kind of what we learned in this class and the right thing to do. What was my question?
What I will take with me from this
Oh
class?
no, my next question going off of that. So you mentioned about it, one of the topics you're definitely going to take away from it and learn about and teach about is intersectionality. So how have you seen intersectionality from this class? How do you think it has affected movements that are going on in 2020, such as Black Lives Matter?
I definitely feel like it has both positively and negatively affected it. So because, like, positively, like, they're all coming together, but negatively some of them may be left out at some points, and it won't be a full group working towards what they want to do or what the change is. So, but definitely if they are all working towards the same thing, working together, then I think that is very positive.
Um, what have you learned in this class that has changed your perspective the most? So I know you're thinking about taking away like intersectionality and microaggressions, but what is something that you didn't really have that much knowledge going in, but you have learned and it has really changed your perspective?
Definitely that. So at the beginning of the semester, we talked about that only white people can be racist. Like, that's what we read about. But recently, when we read Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, we learned about how, like, the 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop rule, if you had 1 drop of white blood in you, you were white. If you had 2 drops of, I think it was black blood in you, you were mixed. And then if you had like 3 drops of black blood in you, you were dark skin. Well, sorry, not light skin and then dark skin. And I did not know that, because you really see that normally when you think about racism, it's all the black people fighting the war against racism against white people. But now you see that there were dark skinned and light skinned people fighting the war against racism against each other, which I did not know that at first. So that really kind of surprised me, because you normally don't hear about that.
I also had the same reaction when I read Kenny's novel. That's exactly the same thing that went through my head when I was reading it, because the Kenny's novel kind of points out and goes deeper into stuff that we kind of touched on at the beginning of this class, and it kind of taught me that being an anti-racist is more than just white people working against the racist society. Like, I mean, yeah, racist white society, I would say. It kind of taught me that everyone kind of needs to work towards being an anti-racist. Even if they consider themselves to be an anti-racist, there's always stuff that you can work on. Where do you see Ball State, Muncie, or even the United States 10 years from now?
Oh, goodness.
So let's start off by Ball State. Where do you see it going?
Okay, I feel like in 10 years, Ball State will be more diverse than it is. Hopefully there will be more students of color, more ethnicities of more students of more ethnicities present, and more professors and administrators of color, different ethnicities and backgrounds, because I feel like that will play a large role into also understanding racism and being able to include and incorporate anyone from any background into the school.
Where do you see Muncie?
I think Muncie will be more diverse as well. With the university being more diverse, I feel like that will allow Muncie to become diverse as well. I feel like it will follow in the footsteps.
And then from the presidential election and all that, starting from now, kind of, where do you see the United States 10 years from now after this big election, this pandemic hit? Where do you see it, United States, with anti-racism and racism in our society?
I feel like right now, I feel like the country is divided. And I feel like hopefully in 10 years, the country will be able to reconstruct to some fairness, hopefully more than some, more respect for different backgrounds and different skin colors, because I feel like if it continues how we are right now with racism, I feel like the whole country is going to be divided, and it'll be like another civil war or war against our own country.
And then last one, as an American, I believe, who lives in Muncie, going to Ball State, where do you see yourself in 10 years regarding anti-racism and just everything that we have learned from this class?
I feel like I see myself having, like, even though this class has given me so much knowledge, want to, in 10 years, I hope to have so much more knowledge and continue learning about it, different aspects, and dive even deeper into what we have learned about, more than we have in this class, even though we've already dived really deep in it, and just continuing to make people or peers and friends and family and anyone around me aware of being an anti-racist and what racism truly means and what it means to people, how it can negatively affect someone, and what the repercussions can be, and definitely retaining this information and continuing to have myself continuing to reevaluate myself any chance I get to make sure I am following how to be anti-racist and I'm doing what I need to do.
Now we need to watch this video in 10 years from now. So,
Yes.
do you have anything else to add to this interview?
I do not.
Okay, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.